All right, welcome everybody to the Shelburne Planning Commission on June 14th. We'll call this to order. First item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
All right, moved by Kate. Seconded by Stephen. Any questions? Or do I need to do the vote before the talk? I always confuse that. No, I want to. I want to do it right.
If you want
Is there
it.
any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Next item is approval of the minutes from May 24th. I have a motion to approve.
I would move to approve the minutes.
Okay. Moved by Dick, seconded by Kate. Any discussion? Pretty trivial. I was just going to suggest maybe putting vice chair next to Andrew's name. If,
Good
and I think we already had the spelling update for Maya discussed, but I think the item on energy, I think that was separate from the transportation section discussion. Just basically to move that after air transportation or.
Thank you.
Isn't it?
So after air transportation, which add something?
Move energy down.
The energy section, it was its own section, discussed separately. Any other thoughts or comments?
Just so that I'm clear then, I thought you were saying that since energy is covered, a bullet was added on joining the climate net. You're pointing out that happened actually after air, so it's just moving it, right?
Yeah, just moving it.
Okay.
Because it like the discussion on the energy section happened after the transportation.
Right, got it, okay.
Not that it really matters in the grand scheme of things, it was discussed. Anything else? Unless I got that backwards. I didn't think we had any energy stuff in the transportation section like that.
Nope.
Okay. All right, so all in favor of approval of the minutes, May 24th?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is any disclosures relating to any potential conflicts of interest tonight? Seeing none. Open to the public. Are there any discussion points unrelated? All right, good stuff. Then we will just jump into the comprehensive plan, or actually, yeah, and the first topic was the design template with Maya.
I can reject it and
While you're queuing that up, I just need to say that it was really encouraging just to see it not in just black and white text for after the last year. Very exciting.
So, as you know, all photos are placeholders for now. I mean, we can keep some of them, of course, but I just started to select what made the most sense. And, oh,
please use that if that's okay.
sure. So, you know, it sort of speaks for itself, but I guess a few things to point out. Maybe, Dean, you could, go to the, so this is the first, you know, the opening page, the facing page, the front cover facing page is on your left, obviously, and that might have some text. It could easily have some text. Right now, you know, we don't have any text for it, but we could easily put something in there. Not a lot. I would advise just a little, maybe some acknowledgments or you know, whatever would be appropriate. Table of contents, that's obviously just all a placeholder. What I was trying to do with this design was to really use photos as a great way to present our town. I was given 2 or 3 beautiful galleries of photos, and it's just so inspiring to play with all the photos and try new things. So what I'm thinking is a lot of photos, big, small, and I want to try to do a design that has a lot of, just continuous treatment, but not, I don't want any 2 pages to look alike. So there's like these common threads that are woven throughout. But, so you see the consistency, but I don't want it to be boring and monotonous. So that's my goal. And so to do that, yeah, a lot of photos and then these color blocks to help kind of set things off. And maybe not on every spread, but just we'll see how that goes. The other thing that I'm using is and on the right side in the lower left, you can see that there's a call out there. And I'm pretty good at, gleaning out call outs, just scanning the page or what have you, and capturing the essence of the message and bringing that out in a call out. Those are, again, placeholders, and I'll find places to put them from a graphic standpoint, but then you all can change those if you decide, just like you can change photos. You can change the call outs.
What's the call out?
Oh, it's okay, so there's 2 on this spread. It's the text that's sort of bigger, stands out. On the previous page, yeah, right there, that's a call out. Okay, so it's just like you see in a magazine, something that just jumps out at you. It's before you read the text, yeah, or not, either way. Or it could be a quote. Anyway, those are the call outs, and this front end there's lots of just small, there's not like real chapters, it's just sections, like we've got the vision. What was the previous section? I don't know. The one before.
Vision and introduction.
The table of contents, and then
Prologue.
the prologue and the introduction, and then we have the vision. Oh no, yeah, the vision. And then chapter 1 starts. And so I envision having all the chapters start on the right side, right facing page. And Dean and I were talking about, how this is going to unfold, and the fact that we're not going to have the whole entire document done at once. It's going to be in batches. So as you all revise the chapters, I can take each one of them as a standalone and design it and kind of tuck it away and then add it in as we piece the whole thing together. Because I'm putting all the chapters starting on the right-hand side, I can easily do that. I just plan on that, and then I can sew them all together at the end. So that is what I envision. Actually, if you could go back, please. Thank you. I'm envisioning a big photo for the beginning of each chapter to kind of set the stage. Here we have a goal statement. I've got the callouts in blue. They're one type of font, and then other things that need to stand out, like a goal statement, will be in this green. It's a different type of graphic treatment. And as this thing grows, you start to see the continuity that will exist throughout the whole document. Right now, we're just looking at 12 pages, so it's kind of hard to see how that's going to flow, but hopefully it will. So you can go to the next. Okay, for the recommended actions, I assume we're going to have that for each chapter. Is that right? Okay. I'm thinking that should be set aside somehow graphically. So instead of in white, I'm thinking in one of the colors with a reversed text, like the way I have it here. And so again, like as you're flipping through, you'll see these full colored pages, and you'll know those are the recommendations for each chapter. Let's see, let's go to the next one. So again, here's a new chapter, full photo, well, not full photo, but large photo. You know, I don't know how, you know, it's the big photo on the left. I'm not sure why I did that. Let's see, let's go back. Yeah, see, there was a vision statement that needed to be in there. Here too. Yeah. Okay, so there's the vision statement, so that needed to be tucked in. Then we start the next chapter. But for the housing chapter, we're just moving right into from one chapter to the next. So it may be that the photo will be associated with the housing chapter, for example. I think that would make the most sense. I'm going to have to see how that goes. It's sort of hard to know how it's all going to work out until I have a few more chapters to work with. And they're pretty short so far, so it's like, whoop, it's over, and you got to jump to the next one. So here, we're still on housing here. And any graphics, I'll just insert them, big or small, depending on the graphic. And again, recommended actions in the, you know, bold colored background with the reverse text. So that's as far as I've gotten, and I didn't want to go any further until getting your feedback. Any ideas, suggestions that you want to put forward, I would welcome them, and we'll just go from there with the next chapters. We can do some revisions to any of these chapters, and then once you're really happy with everything, we can proceed with the rest of it.
I know that there's a lot more content to add in there. It's encouraging, though, seeing in this format that what I was thinking was going to completely go well beyond 100 pages, that is probably feasible to fit within that guideline.
Yeah, well, how many pages are we talking about?
Well,
in
looking at
terms
it
of
here,
text?
I mean, a lot of these, you're getting 2 pages on one,
Yeah,
just the way the text is lined up, so
Yep.
that's going to
I
condense it
think
quite a bit.
if
isn't it?
you have 100 pages of text, we'll probably have that much or less of design.
What is the formatted page size?
8.5 by 11 out of landscape with bleeds.
In the format in which we're looking at it is like this, with, I imagine, larger text and spaced bigger. So I suspect that in this format, I don't know, it could be close. But then that could be the sort of thing where that might influence whether or not there are big pictures on pages
Yeah.
versus.
Yeah,
I can imagine some internal pages when you really get into the thick of it that might just
not how much.
not have as many
Yeah.
photos.
Right.
Yeah, I think the front end is going to be, you know, with more photos, and because it's sort of like opening, you know, the document. But it depends, and I do think it's good to have some big photos throughout. You don't want it to all be on one end and nothing on the back end or the middle. So that's why I thought that having a big photo at the beginning of each chapter at a minimum would be a good idea. And it just tells you right away where you're at. You're at the housing chapter or the recreation chapter.
My only concern is the readability of the size of the print, and I think it should be.
Well,
It'll be much
it's
But
going to be bigger
this
than that. I think I
is
said in the cover memo that forgive me for doing it in black and white, but if anybody had wanted it at the color and full size, then I would have did that.
So
But
it's gonna be almost double.
since you had it as PDFs,
So what do you have it?
I'm looking at
they,
the
they've
chapter
got it
2
as
housing.
is basically 8.5 by 11. I just kept the print job to 8.5 by 11, so it's reduced.
Oh, okay, yeah, so it's half as much, it's half scale, you're
Right.
looking at 50%, yeah.
I was nervous.
I wouldn't worry,
You said it's landscape?
it's landscape,
Well, it'll
yep.
come with a magnifying glass.
Oh, I've got some right here.
It could be bound with a coil, because it's gonna be under 150 pages, or 200, I forgot, where you have to do a perfect bound, which is with, you know, glue, they glue it together. This is not gonna require that. It's gonna be easier to bound. It could be coil, or actually, we could also do what's called a saddle stitch, which is a fancy way of saying 2 staples in the spine, and it looks pretty clean. I'm sure you've seen it a lot, but either one of those. Actually, that's what I would recommend. I would
Yeah?
recommend the saddle stitch for this piece.
All right.
Sure.
I just have a question. Sometimes during the course of the term of the plan, you make revisions to the plan. And would that kind of binding impede that?
Well,
Do you know
it wouldn't, I imagine it wouldn't get bound until the final document is fully approved.
No, but I mean, over the course of 5 years, you sometimes
Upgrades.
update a regulation because somebody's come and asked for a regulation to be updated. Does that call for something like a loose leaf? I just wonder.
I think, from my perspective, Gail, there won't really be an issue because we aren't going to be, I'm not anticipating a large print run. What we've done with documents that we've produced in the last few years is we've had limited print runs. When people want printed copies, they're purchasing them. They're expensive,
Yeah.
but we don't have a large inventory of them on hand. And when we work through that inventory, we get another batch of 25 or 30 or however many we feel is appropriate. So in an instance like what you're describing, I think it may depend on where we are in the pile, but maybe those copies will get tossed depending on the amendment. For those, it could be that we can deal with something as crude as a sticker in it, but there will be another version that will be produced digitally, and then we'll print from that.
Okay, thanks. It's just a question because it's so
I mean,
pretty.
if a lot of it is going to be, a lot of people are going to access the document digitally, pretty easy to update it, just pull a page out, put a new one in. Either I could do that or someone else could do that. So edits could happen pretty easily. And then you just upload the new document, you're good to go.
Yeah.
A couple of questions, Maya. When we see this digitally, like in the future, when it's all done, is it going to be like this, doubles 2 pages at a time, or is it going to be a single page at a time?
It could be either or both. I gave Dean both versions. Oftentimes, an end product is single pages.
Yeah, I think that would be.
Because that way you can print it off on your desktop printer. I think it's easier to flip through. I gave it to you in both
Yeah.
versions because I wanted you to
got it.
see the facing
That's good.
pages and how they relate to each other.
Okay, I understand.
But yeah, I envision whatever's posted on the website would be like a single page.
Okay, great. And my second question is, were you figuring on having some kind of like something down on each page to tell us what chapter we're in? Because once we get a lot of pages, it would be
Like
hard to keep
footer?
track that we're in chapter 1, 2, or 3,
Sure.
and without something in the footer saying.
Yeah. I've done that a lot, and I didn't do it here, but we could definitely do that either on the left side or the right facing page side. We could, one side could say Shelburne Comprehensive Plan, and the other side could say housing or whatever, chapter 3 housing. However you want to do it. There's plenty of space down there to do whatever you want.
Okay.
So we
Right.
you guys can think about how you want to set that up. What would make the most
Seems
sense?
like it's a good idea just to have it on the page, either one or both
Either one,
pages.
okay, yeah, that's often what people do. So, yeah, I mean, some people put chapter 2 and then, the name of the document and then the chapter on both sides, and I feel like that's a lot of redundancy. So,
I could see it on each page, especially if we're looking at it like this, where we're just on one page
yeah.
at
that's
a
true.
time.
Yep, we could
Okay,
do it however you'd like,
great.
but it sounds like definitely want to show the chapters.
That's a
Okay.
good idea.
The titles, the chapter number and the title. Okay. I'll add that in. It's a good
Okay,
Point.
thanks.
Yeah, I just like seeing it not in black and white straight. This is great.
Yeah, so as you're editing, any suggestions for photos? I mean, a lot of it's pretty self-evident to me, and especially since I know this town, I live here. But there might be photos that would really work better than what I'm choosing, so, Dean, it might be helpful to give them access to the photos. I don't know.
Well, there had been some discussion about the possibility of a single member of the commission having the job of coming up with the 5 to 8 photos per chapter that would then be flagged, basically, for Maya to work with. I think Susanna's name was mentioned, right? Or maybe you even volunteered, maybe you have that duty, but we can give everybody access. But,
And would it be okay if I maybe add a few more if I need to what you provide?
you mean if you have your own?
No, just from the sources.
Oh, you mean if there's one that you really like from?
Or if I just need another one, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have them all. I guess I had thought that the winnowing down to 8 was something that was going to help you so that you
Yeah.
weren't plowing through them all, but they're so
Right.
nice that it's kind of easy to do that.
Yeah.
What's the influx been like?
Well,
Or has
Lee
there been
Crone
influx?
gave us a thumb drive or gave a lot of photos. Boston Neary gave
Mhm.
access to her photos.
Did I use any of her photos here? It's just
I
one
can't,
preview.
I'm not sure. I
She
could
had some
tell.
nice photos.
Yeah, there was one person who contacted who hasn't actually followed through. There's several of the photos came from a project. They're not high resolution, and I don't know that any of them made their way in, but there was something called the Oral History Project done about 15 years ago, and there were a lot of
those are
historic
great.
photos. So that project resulted in
I'm
that.
really excited to get into those. Those are for the history chapters, or is there just one history chapter?
Yeah.
There's some really cool historic photos of the town.
That'd be really good.
Yeah,
Nice,
yeah.
I'm just trying to think how. What
Are
else?
there any kind of, like for Route 7, are there some change over times, over time photographs, like even just ortho photos, you know, so we can show, you know, the mess that it became and the regulating plan, like what we're trying to do? I mean, I think that's
Well, I
appropriate.
mean, there are certainly a lot of aerial photos. There's nothing, well, we have historic air photos here. Those are photos that I don't believe have been scanned, some of them. We could certainly get that if there's a place in the plan that people say, I really would like that, we could get it. I don't know if you've done that sort of thing before, but I'm sure we could make that part of the plan.
I assume you're going to have photo credits in here for whoever
Sure.
is the father
Yeah.
of a professional photographer.
Yeah.
I know that's a sensitive thing.
95% of the time, I put photo credits in. Some people don't want them, but if they're, I mean, I'm gonna need them, and I think I probably have them. I mean, Lee
Yeah, I mean, Lee has.
in Boston, and
They've both said, I mean, we haven't had formal written releases, but to the extent that
I
that's.
think people would get a kick out of it. You know, if volunteers, or even I know some young people who are really hoping to share some of their images and
cool.
would
Yeah,
love to see their name
so I can
in little
integrate
print.
those
Yeah,
in
right.
really easily.
Well, are you thinking with each photo or a credits
Well,
page?
it could go on, I mean, some people want it to be all completely consistent, and every photo has a credit, so it doesn't look like it was accidentally
Would the
omitted.
commission be
or-
happy with a credits page?
We could do that too. We could, like, at the back, just a long, dense, list, page 1, and the credit, and page 2, where there's multiple photos on a page, you would have to describe them briefly, really quickly, this photo belongs to so-and-so.
Wouldn't it be easier to just do like the magazines do, just like a very tiny,
Yep,
in whatever contrasting color,
Sure.
just say photo credit,
yep,
courtesy of whatever.
yep. That's
Whoever
easier
on
for
each
the
photo.
reader.
Yeah,
'Cause-
and I think like somebody putting in their stuff would know that there's a connection.
The photographer
that
would
people
probably
can see.
appreciate having the credit right there rather than buried in the
Are
back.
people happy with that? I guess if you're an IP person and you really want that, and I know professional photographers and I respect their work and I think they should get credit, but from a design standpoint, people don't feel like that's gonna be a drag on the design? I mean, I know magazines do it all the time.
I think the magazines do it so small that, you know, sometimes when it's my daughter's name on it, I want to say, like, could you make it bigger? But it's usually really small that you almost don't even see it unless you're looking for it.
Yeah,
I
you
like it though, because you know, this is homegrown images and it's our town plan and it's in very much in the spirit of document, I think.
And it also, I think, says that it's not stock photos from, you know, taken
Right.
from somewhere.
Yeah.
This is our town,
it makes
you
a
know, for real.
difference.
It's real
yeah,
people
it's
taking
authentic.
real
Yep.
photos.
Okay, well, I like the idea of putting them vertically. Could try that.
Mhm.
I think that would work better for some, like a page. This is a good example where adding photo credits under each one of those photos would be a little clunky.
Yeah.
But putting them alongside really small, not too small, like 6 point, something like that. You still can see it, you can still read it, but it doesn't jump out at you. It's not this bulky thing.
I think we had talked at one point about having a submission process. I don't, how feasible is that?
Well, I put out one announcement on Front Porch Forum, and that's
Yeah.
what gave a couple of responses.
I am clearly lagging on my
I
front
put
porch.
out
You were-
another
you were-
call, I sort of tried to enhance that,
Yeah.
but we can do a little bit more.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because I think that would be good, just a community engagement. And
Yeah.
You're right, like people being able to see their pictures in the plan if they get selected.
Oh,
is a
yeah,
cool
they'll love
thing,
that.
so it's-
Maybe they'll even buy one.
Yeah,
There you go.
the first objective was to give a slug of photos so that we would have them to use as the placeholders.
And they're great. There's a lot of really good photos. There's a lot more than what you're seeing here. So I'm not lacking in photos.
Good stuff.
At what point, what's sort of a deadline? When would you want to have the photos sort of flagged for use? Like if
Well,
we were
when-
to help prioritize them?
When the chapters are ready, and we're going to do this incrementally, right, Dean? Is that still the plan?
Well, yeah, so I guess, you know, you could focus first on the housing. The chapters that I gave you are all here, but then there were a couple of candidates. So housing, parks and recreation, these opening sections, and then I think there was one more. Those would be the ones to start with, because then you could work with those.
So as the chapters become ready or close to ready, you could just pull some photos, flag some photos. And the more the better.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, what would be really great is to just take all the photos and just put them in categories.
Yeah,
You know, and then we've got big batches and I can just go at each batch as,
yeah, I'd rather have it sort of done ahead of time so that you can just
yeah,
go into it.
that would be great, yeah.
I'll send you the link.
Okay.
Yeah, this is great. Are there any other topics to hit with this?
So,
great.
Yeah.
thank you. I just have one question, just so I can plan a little bit. What do you see as next steps as far as moving ahead on the rest of the plan, the next chapter? You know, maybe that Dean and I can talk about that later, but I just curious where we're at.
Well, like I was saying, there are at least 2 chapters that we didn't give you because we didn't want to overwhelm you as far as the template.
Mhm.
There was also some mention of the possibility of alternative designs, but if there's no need to do alternative designs and you're just going to go forward with this, that's one step that we don't have to take. So, like I'm thinking, again, give you the photos for the chapters that are covered by the template and the ones that you didn't put into to the template yet. And then there's transportation that we can pass along because, and that's going to be, that's a good sized chapter. I don't have them all in my head, but
Mhm.
but there are a number of chapters that
That are really close to
that
ready.
were
Well, because land use and public utilities are the last two, right? And then the draft.
Yes,
alpha
right.
draft goes out.
Public facilities, utilities, land use is the big one. Transportation we did. Yeah, so there's not a lot left.
And there, I mean, it's entirely possible that there are going to be revisions, but I think the bulk of the documents and the text is pretty much, like, I'm
The way
sure
you
there's
want
going
it.
to be tweaks, but
Yeah,
that's going
I
to
wonder
That's-
if this glamorous format might encourage us to diminish some of our text a little bit, but
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's been the challenge since the beginning, though, is,
yeah.
I mean, yeah. Like, because once we start sending drafts to the select board, I don't know that our ability to just keep making changes is,
Well, you're quite some way from that before you're ready to send it to them as something that they have control of. You wouldn't do that until you have your hearings. So
not for their control over it, but in terms of alpha draft, and that's what we're reviewing.
Yeah.
What I don't want to do, and would take a pretty firm stand, is I don't want to send a draft to the select board and then continue to make a bunch of changes, so they review something and we've already changed it,
Yeah.
and then they have to do it again.
yeah, I think that
That'll add time.
as tempting as it would be to send over chapters beyond the ones that were considered when we were talking about the template, the best thing to do would be to wait until you get through future land use, you revisit the public facilities part of that utilities and section, and then there's at least some opportunity given to the select board so that you can get a read on whether or not they're liking it and you feel good about setting Maya loose, or whether or not it would make a little bit of sense to hold off. And that's one of the reasons why we've been racing to try to get this complete set done in June so that we can get them.
Right, and that preliminary feedback may not happen on short order. It's a lot to go through. So
Not in
that-
short order.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what that looks like from the select board's perspective.
I always wonder if the select board's gonna see it as a distraction to the document itself. I mean, how much time do they wanna spend? Maybe they'll, when they're done, they'll kick it back to us and we can do that. I'm just speculating that, it is a working document, so the possibility of.
But if it
not
looks
spending
really
a huge
nice.
amount of time right now.
Right, make it feel like an A.
I think this format will make it much more readable for them,
That's
and will
the idea.
hold their
Yeah.
attention. And
Yeah.
it's not easy to
But the,
go
now,
Draw you
cover.
in.
maybe help me out, was the idea behind getting the select board an alpha draft was so that they could at least do a preview run through it to see if there's anything glaringly missing?
I don't think so much missing as are they ready for this? Because
okay.
as Kate has said, there are some new ideas and there's some ideas stated more clearly and forcefully than before. And are they ready? Are they ready to go there? And if they're ready to go there, then onward. But if there's hesitation to make that big a step, then I think you would put things in the design format at some risk.
Right, no, that's fair. And I guess we would have to see what their timeline for being able to get us comment back might be around some of those concepts.
We've mentioned when we went to them that it's really important for us to get a sense from them, and I don't know that it's really not a request made of them to take a board action as much as it is for them to review it as individuals so that we know where as individuals they stand. But I don't know that it would necessarily be tied to their meetings, that they
Fair.
all have to read it and then they all have to get together and take a vote. No, that wasn't my idea, to have them be formal that way.
And I wasn't necessarily thinking that either. I really want, because we have to be honest. I mean, once this does start going to hearing, there's going to be discussion. Things could end up needing to be changed. So, we just need to time box things somehow to say, okay, if we're presenting a draft, do we give them a month to provide some preliminary feedback so that we can then start getting things into a design? Because that's starting to put us into late summer, and
Yeah.
Is there any reason they don't have access even now to review if they want to get into it?
I think, no, there's no technical reason why they couldn't have it. I think the issue would be, do you want to give it to them so they have all of the pieces rather than they get started and then do they really understand the whole document if we give it to them in dribs and drabs out of order?
I think we were mostly waiting to just get through these last two sections so that, at least from our perspective, that's why we're calling it an alpha draft. It's certainly not final. We know that there are going to be changes, but
The one design question that I was going to ask has to do with maps and fitting maps in, and how do you think that would work? We didn't give you any maps to illustrate with. Could you talk a little bit about that? And when we get through the chapters, I believe there's going to need to be a really serious discussion having to do with the maps. And I was telling somebody at the Natural Resources Committee meeting that I feel like there won't be the room in the document for all of the maps that we might want to put in. And so we'll have to think of what we're going to do. I mean, two categories of maps, the ones in this document and then maybe the ones in an additional document.
should we just make that an agenda item for
That's on that larger
It
schedule. for mine.
is, right? Yeah, I thought so.
How many maps do you envision?
Well, the current
Well, we have
plan
the
has
whole
about
maps.
34. I mean, it's,
34 maps? So this document would be
well, that,
potentially more than 100 pages?
well, like I was saying,
With
I
maps?
don't see, I didn't envision a document like this having the same number of maps as that, because some of them they're really not central. They're more for documentation.
Mhm.
And,
Put the maps in last
Sorry?
section as as an index, just a map index, and then reference where the map is.
well, I mean, future land use is a chapter where maps are, I think, pretty critical.
Yeah.
You know, you want people to understand the pattern. So that's one section that I believe there will be. And right now in the town plan, I think there are 4 or 5 future land use related maps. And there are no natural resource maps in the body. But all the natural resource maps are in the map volume.
There will be a lot of references to specific maps within the text of natural resources.
Right.
Which would, yeah, and that's why I would suggest we're not going to solve this now because we have there's the maps volume, there's the discussion around volume 2 that has a lot of content that's not going to be part of this. So from a design standpoint and also trying to keep us somewhat on track, this I think looks really good. And then from the sections that we have I mean, even with transportation being a larger one, that's a larger one that could go into the format and could be something to be worked on. But to your point, if we want to wait until we have some preliminary feedback from the select board, that might be wise.
You saw the maps in the Essex plan. They were inserted right in the document in pretty much every chapter, or most of the chapters. Would that work here for the chapters that need maps? I mean, in other words, would they fit on the page? Some documents I've done, we've had to do fold-outs.
I think the maps that we have would generally fit on the page. It's more that there are just so many of them that we
Yeah.
might, depending on how things start coming together, we might end up hitting size limitations.
Yeah. Okay. Or weeding some out. I don't know if that's possible. Or having a separate addendum.
Having an
Well,
appendix
that's
or
what
an
I think.
addendum.
I
yeah.
think that to the degree that there are maps that people think are important, like, as an example, the maps that go along with an energy plan, there are some towns that are including those maps. I don't think they need to be in our plan,
Right.
in this type of document.
But
they
I
might-
also, isn't that part of the discussion that we would have in
Yeah.
a future meeting to figure out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as whether it goes into the design format before the select board gets it or after they see it and make comments, I agree with Susanna that they're, I think, more likely to understand it better. It'll make more sense, and then therefore possibly maybe their review will go quicker and they might have fewer changes that they're going to bounce back to us, because I think it's human nature is when something looks done, then people want to change it less.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm not trying to confuse things. It was more just to be consistent with layout of the schedule that we had. I definitely agree with that. I was getting a strong feeling that because of some of the change in perspective that we're adding to some of these sections, that there may be some pushback, and that may require us to go back and redo how things are, which would then in turn impact potentially how the design is done. And I think that, Dean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's where you were coming from in terms of getting the select board something to look through.
I don't want to have to have Maya do it twice. Or
Yeah, I don't
substitute.
mind minor edits, but major overhauls, that could be problematic, especially if it just starts to add up.
So is it possible to have all the maps online and then just on the print version, select the pages that you want to?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Well, to have all the maps online
Online?
and the print product would be only the important maps. Is that
That's
something
what I
else?
was wondering about, is maybe just put the important maps in the plan and then
But have them
have a
available
separate
online
document.
for people who are working with the documents.
Yeah, that was my thought too. But it's all up to you, how you want to do it.
Yeah, I that's my idea, because in the Essex plan, you know, these maps are on the page. When they're fit on 8.5 by 11, the scale is a little bit challenging, and yes, for a casual reader who's trying to get the general sense from the map, you understand it, but you aren't going to get the detail, and I think a complete set of things at a larger scale would be valuable. So I think that there will be I would recommend a subset. And I don't know if it'll work out to be one map on every page, or one map on every chapter. It could. But I think that sections like the future land use section would have at least a 2, and possibly 3 or 4.
The other option, like I mentioned, is, having larger scale sheets of paper, something that folds out. I've done that before too. The printers they know how to handle that. So, and then the electronic version could have, just, you have your scroll of 8.5 by 11, and then all of a sudden you come to a bigger page. That's fine too. You could do that in the PDF. So it might be twice the size. It might be 11 by 17, for example.
So for this discussion, I think the main thing is, are we suggesting that we should take our draft as is, or some sections that we feel are complete, and start getting them into the design format prior to sending to the select board versus just giving them text? I'm completely fine either way. It was more just sensitivities around having to redo stuff.
If there's a lot of controversy, I prefer not to receive them until they have them.
Mine as well, and I'd like to think that there wouldn't be controversy. I was just getting a feeling that there was a concern that there might be, and therefore we might want to get that reaction first, and that was my only hesitation. Otherwise, I'm happy to move ahead and...
I think the way Maya has it laid out, where there's a page of recommended actions, I mean, it may be that 2 of those bullets end up getting deleted, but I don't think it's something that would be a whole new format.
No.
Or it's, sometimes we've used stronger language, they may want softer language, but I can't imagine that it would affect the flow of how
Yeah,
page goes to page.
That's my concern. I don't mind, pulling out bullets, replacing text, but, and that's part of my budget. But when we're doing like a major overhaul where we've got to insert like 5 paragraphs on a page where there's just no room for it.
Or take out 5 paragraphs, because we've got some sections that get kind of wordy.
It's easier to take out because you can put a photo in, but adding
Right.
sometimes is really hard. And it just becomes this domino effect where all the subsequent pages, well, not all of them, but to a point, there might be 4 pages that are affected. And
Right.
so that's what we want to avoid. It's that kind of scenario. The editorial stuff, that's to be expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we're feeling confident enough to just start getting it into format, I'm perfectly okay with that. The comment, Susanna, that you made earlier about potentially going back and trying to whittle things down a little bit, that could have that kind of an impact. But to Gail's point, if you end up with extra space, you throw in a picture. So that could solve that.
I'd be in favor of putting it in the design before the select board sees it.
Yeah, and I agree with the reasoning why. I think that it would be easier to receive in that format.
I think the pictures will help tell the story too.
Right.
I mean, we
Right.
may not have nailed it in their, eyes, in terms of the text. They may want to make some small changes that way, but I think the pictures will very much convey the gist of what we're trying to convey. And so,
Yeah, that's the idea, is
Yeah.
that the text and the photos work together.
Sure. Is that
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I-
think,
great?
get the sections, which means start talking about land use soon.
Yeah, we need to do that. Good segue. Am I looking antsy? Well, no, we're way over time.
okay.
We've been just running a little late lately. Yeah, that's excellent though. Thank you.
Great, well, I
Yeah, it looks
appreciate all the
really good.
feedback, and I will stay in touch with Dean. We'll talk about next steps, right, Dean?
Yeah, I will, like I said, there are those sections well, you already have them. Didn't I ship them all to you?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay,
I thought I only,
okay. Well, we'll make sure that
Take a
you get
look.
those.
thanks. Okay, let me know
Yeah,
if
it's
anything else comes to mind.
It is really
Sorry?
exciting.
It's such an upgrade.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
It really is.
Good thing there's not a plan tax, because, it's like, you get a really nice house, you pay more tax. There's no plan tax.
Yeah, can we add a penny?
If you think of anything else, let me know. So, but we'll just talk soon. And I will
Tomorrow,
make those
probably.
adjustments that you talked about, the footers and, what was the other? I don't know. Yeah, photographs,
right.
that's right.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Have a good
See ya.
night.
You too. All right, so future land use is
All right.
on the board.
So, speaking of changes. So, did you guys get a chance to take a look?
Actually went in and made a couple of suggestions today.
Okay.
I sent the print out to the printer the wrong way, and I feel a little bit like a clown, I'm wearing clown shoes, but I couldn't.
I thought you ordered the large.
Makes it nice and beautiful.
Well, someone
Is that what you wanted in the plan?
came into my office, did you really want those printed on tabloid paper? No! But as a consequence, I did my notes on the oversized paper, so. So we know that Dick has some comments that are in the document that we confirmed didn't get deleted when he closed the
Well, I
browser
wasn't
window.
sure, I had to learn how to use this. So I kind of messed it up, and I had to go back and fix a bunch of stuff.
Well, that repetition means you're probably not going to do that again, right?
No, I got a pretty good handle on it now.
That's awesome.
And if you want your own large, because I did it twice.
That would be great, then I wouldn't have to wear the glasses.
You can wear clown shoes too.
Thank you.
So, I approach this trying to take a more qualitative approach to the character of development and land use in the town, which it seems like we have really only kind of done purposely so far in the village, where we have the historic design review overlay, and then more recently in the Route 7 corridor. And then we sort of have some oversight, in the other parts of the town through the natural resources policy, but it's all, to my mind, it's all kind of weak. And I wanted this is my sort of first attempt at, trying to come up with something a bit more comprehensive and looking at development overall in the town and, in an aggregate sense, and how the different parts of the town interrelate, how we want them to interrelate. So that development isn't just something that happens to us, but it's something that we actually actively shape and guide how it occurs. And then I had some thoughts, obviously, on what I think that should look like. So that's sort of what's in there.
I had one comment that is on paper, not in here. The paragraph that ends with human scale, I was thinking as I read it, you're talking about the visual qualities of the town as a whole. You talk about the village and the Route 7 corridor. You talk about, I was just wondering whether or not you would also want to refer to the rural area specifically. It just seemed to me like you're talking about the town as the whole. You're talking about the village area. We're talking about the other commercial areas. And I just felt like the next thing I anticipated reading was something that referred to the visual quality specific of the rural area. And so I don't know if anybody else had that reaction, but the note I made was rural, ? Did you want to have something you said specifically about the rural area?
Yeah, where are you looking?
It would
right
be
now?
here, so in this paragraph that
Uh-huh.
you've written, protect.
Sure, if somebody wants to add something in. I mean, I'm just taking
Well-
the lead on this. I'm not necessarily, I understood that to mean I'm taking the sort of first stab at this. So
Yeah.
if others have thoughts,
Well,
Definitely,
the
yeah.
comment would be something to the effect that in the rural area, that the town has invested in the conservation of important resource lands. I mean, because that gets to the idea that it's town-wide, it's including the rural areas, and that is in fact one of the topics or things that the town has
Okay.
done meaningfully in the rural area.
yeah, maybe Gail, do you have like a little pithy sentence about that, since that's been really more the focus of, the open space plan?
I actually started taking notes on all this when I got further into the detail, and I don't have any notes written down here, but I would love to see something there that
Sure.
includes that.
Yeah.
And it even could be something that gets lifted from the language of the natural resources section, and I'd be happy to try to work on a sentence. You looking
Great.
for one sentence?
Sure, just a blurb about something, that kind of gets at.
Right.
I mean, I think, had a family emergency I had to get back for, so I was kind of getting this done a little bit quickly, so I sort of overlooked that. But I guess in my mind, I feel like the open space plan does a pretty good job of sort of speaking for that section of the town and its
And we might
assets.
Just
Yeah.
refer to the open space plan
Yeah,
in this sentence. Can I keep this and make notes on it?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
maybe lots of significant conservation, focus of significant conservation, land conservation, and what would you say? Planning direction as depicted in the open space plan or something like that.
Can I take a day to work on it?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
That was the only thing I was, about page 1. Are there any other comments on that?
Go ahead. I like the format, but some of it I think is a little wordy. And at the first paragraph, holistic, I don't know that needs to be there. It could be pursue an overall vision for how future development would work. I don't think we need holistic.
Or are you? I'm sorry?
Very first paragraph,
Yeah.
next to the last sentence, it says overall and, then it goes to holistic.
Holistic vision, yeah.
And I thought we could eliminate and holistic and just have it say pursue an overall vision of how future development. It just seems more readable.
Or maybe take out overall and just say holistic.
Yeah, I'd rather keep holistic in.
Pursue a holistic vision.
I'm wondering if everybody's idea of holistic may be different. It's, well, I'm not gonna argue the point, I'm just. I
Okay,
do
so
think
are
it's
we
a little
taking
too
out
wordy.
overall and?
Yes.
Are we anding holistic or a-ing holistic?
No, you have to put a definition in for me for holistic.
And N to A.
Now we have this Brits.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to. I'm okay with the extra stuff. The second sentence kind of grabbed me a little bit in terms of the characteristics distinguished but are threatened by growth and development pressures. Which is, I don't know why that jumped out at me. It's okay. I shouldn't have said it out loud. I did have a comment in the second paragraph, the third line, about contributing dollars. If nothing else, the before Shelburne should go away, but unless we want to specify that it's dollars that are being contributed, it's just that those things contribute to Shelburne's economy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Take out dollars.
Yeah.
Took out the
So
sum.
just, yeah, that was just more of a readability thing, but then dollars doesn't necessarily need to be specified because there's more than just
Okay.
financial that gets contributed
Right.
to an economy. And then it was a couple lines after that with civic pride. There was a comma. I'm not seeing it there now. Right, 7, enhanced stability. 2 lines above your cursor. After civic pride, I think would need a comma. And and I completely understand the spirit in which it's being said, but I'm also trying to think of what would trigger people and to prevent future discussion. The private, that will not be undermined by inappropriate development nearby. Is that, I know that there's intent behind that. Does that
That
complete the
sentence
paragraph?
was pretty much directly lifted from the design review guidelines that was.
Perfect.
That was right
Okay.
out of that manual, so it was I was looking for, the Route 7 stuff I could, since I worked on that myself, I could come up with a blurb for that, but the purpose and goal statements for the design review, I just took that right out of there, so if
Great.
there's another way that you want to say it.
No, that's fine. And again, this isn't a criticism, it's just more, I'm voicing what was popping out when I was reading it. Outside of that, just a blank line before the goal.
What was my comment, Dean? I can't quite read.
What was your comment?
Just up above.
You were looking to change this to these or these to this, I forget which.
Where was it?
Expanding
This type of planning.
this type of
oversight.
planning oversight is what you were saying.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought it sounded better, but maybe it's not. I don't.
Yeah, so.
And it's readable.
Anybody else? Either way.
Good.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Or these types, how about these types? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Or whatever.
Are there multiple types of planning oversight that we're talking about?
Well, we discuss various things that we've done in other places, so but just maybe planning oversight or something. And just take out these types, just expanding planning oversight.
Oh, there you go.
That if you
Yeah.
are interested in reducing words.
Go away, words. All right.
And the expanding paragraph? The next to the last line, you say that fits the surrounding context and in closer alignment. Would you just want to add, and that is in closer alignment?
Sure, yeah. And is in closer,
Or just is? You don't even need the that.
yeah, sure.
Good deal.
Mhm.
Would you say on placemaking is the process of creating quality places where people want to live, work, play, and learn?
Sure, yeah. Keep the in out.
So kill that, the in,
Yeah.
and then say, instead of that people, say where people. I love the mix of social opportunity, Kate.
Oh, thanks.
I'm sorry, what was
I was just admiring
Okay.
C.
However we want to do this, my next comment was on point 4. So if is there anything, or objective 4? If there's anything before that.
No.
I'm not sure what, something didn't come out in that, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if there was a, like, yeah.
Everywhere in Shelburne, I would just say, just in Shelburne, to end it there. That looks like something just got left in.
I thought you
It looks like it was already edited. Yeah.
Oh,
Create. Oh, yeah, that was one of my errors. Before I figured out the
You
system.
got it though, yeah.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, so, all right.
I didn't mean to change it, but I.
So we're rejecting that comment.
No, I think we should,
But I would say everywhere, I think everywhere is important
Yeah.
to put in, because other parts of the town have been, I'm talking about, for me, it's really important that we give everything equal parity, because we have kind of given priority to certain parts of the town in the past, and the results are clear, you know, like the village looks really good, because it's had a lot more oversight.
So accept everywhere, and then the,
I'd take everything else out.
I mean,
that's-
yeah.
We're rejecting everywhere, but we're
yes,
accepting this
right,
one.
keep,
Yeah, keep
keep
the
the
other
word
stuff out,
everywhere,
yeah.
and- right. Yeah, throughout Shelburne? Yeah, that sounds good.
Or throughout, yeah, whatever, throughout Shelburne.
Yeah,
Oh, we want to say throughout Shelburne instead of everywhere, eh?
yeah.
Whoops.
And if it's more efficient, if you want to just accept the changes as we
Above?
go along, yeah, like above.
Okay, I was wondering whether or not that, or maybe I'll just do it after.
Sure.
If
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
clearer
that's-
on them, it'll just be less prone to messing up something.
I can't remember for number 5 if HB DRC is defined somewhere else prior, but if not, I think I'm a fan of spelling things out once at least.
Yeah, and this would
For the
perhaps be
layperson.
the first place in the document.
In this, Oh, in the document.
Oh, it might be.
Yeah, since this would be ahead of the,
Right.
the hit
Oh,
striking
yeah, you're
goal.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was being a little lazy. I was like, oh, you don't do that. Put all those acronym things in there.
Yeah.
At least I got the acronym right. I never know what, they're always like that.
Just throw some letters out there.
Yeah,
It would be good.
there's so many of them.
Oops.
You have 2 number 5s.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that Andrew can wrestle with Google Docs to make that work. I'll make it correct in the, well, actually, it's not even in a Google Docs number, so, okay.
And then there's something weird with the font size too, but that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the same.
well, when I supply the text to Maya, I have to scrub it.
Gotcha.
Basically.
Okay.
And what would become number 6? Do you want my, you want me to just
Yes.
type in?
Sure, yeah.
The second sentence, or it looks like the second sentence where the type gets bigger, the sentence has a sort of awkward start. Throughout the town and achieve.
Yeah, let's take that and out.
So throughout the town, comma.
Comma.
Yeah.
So what about Dick's striking,
That's fine.
okay, so you're okay with getting rid of more?
Yeah.
But we are starting that sentence as it is right now, so we're gonna be rejecting his,
Right. Is that a semicolon after that?
wait, what?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
Beyond the village?
Yeah, because in the village, we do that. So it's, the idea is to expand that kind of oversight that is in the village, that level of oversight and insistence on higher caliber built results and approaches to more thoughtful development, expand that everywhere. So it's not just, it doesn't just stop, at the,
I just thought by deleting village, you were just saying that basically about the whole town. That you expand which landscape and cultural aspects require preservation throughout, it's basically.
Well, I think it's
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
just differentiate that right now, the HBDRC has jurisdiction in the village,
Oh, right.
and we want to expand beyond that,
Okay.
and I agree with that.
yeah.
So keep beyond the village? So reject, yeah.
Yeah, rejection.
No goaltending. And which? It's good, I think, right?
On which landscape and cultural
It's just a
aspects beyond
double.
the village,
Oh, right.
take one which out.
Yeah,
I don't care which one you take out.
all right.
Why is that weird? Small type thing happening.
For number 2, my only, just reading that, I don't disagree with any of it. My reaction was that it needs to balance with energy needs as well. again, I understand the spirit of the document and what we're trying to say. I just, sometimes I wonder if we have, like the energy section was working on finding a balance between, like my general sticking point that someone will say, no, you can't put solar there because that's a scenic view. And I get that we want to protect our scenic views, but you can take that that can be taken too far. So if there isn't some kind of qualifier or something, then,
Yeah, I'm personally, I'm more concerned about protecting that from development rather than
Right.
from solar, because a solar array can get ripped out, that, to me, that's a temporary, use. But if you develop something, that's it, and if it's
Exactly.
not done properly, that's gone.
and I don't know that anything needs to be added there. That was
Yeah.
just my thought when I read that was,
I have
Like-
two questions on that paragraph. One, close views does that have to be close views, or would it just be views of farms, crops?
Well, it matters, the layering of views matters, right? I mean, it's different in different places, and, I was looking at, sort of language from, scenic, guidelines from other places, just to get some verbiage to throw in. This, if that's not clear, I mean, we could
No,
use other things. But I did use, the guidelines that I looked at were for places that were in the New England region. So to me, it seemed like there had some, basis for comparison with Shelburne.
It's not something
The
we,
open space plan referred to primary and secondary views.
Okay.
At least that was the old open space plan. I was familiar with the language in the new one. Doesn't ring bells yet, but
Yeah.
that might be one way to look at it.
Yeah, maybe if you could take a look at that, if there's a better way to say it. It just, to me, close versus distant seemed to convey there was a different qualitative aspect to them. Also, a sense of, it conveyed to me a sort of sense of a smaller setting, a more intimate setting versus a more expansive setting, that resonated with the idea of scenic protections and qualities.
so the other question I had was a prominent structure, which is sometimes seen as advantageous, like a big barn that sits out. I wondered if we couldn't put I had a couple, like an ostentatious structure or imposing structures or view-grabbing McMansions, something. I think that's what you're looking for, wasn't it?
I am. I mean, there was the, issue from a number of years ago on Pond Road when the house was built that, many people found, to be discordant. So, so I think that
So I don't know.
some
Maybe
things.
discordant structures?
Yeah, discordant,
instead of
maybe that's
prominent?
it. Okay.
Yeah.
Isn't it
Or non-compatible
qualitative that
structures?
It's going to be very variable.
Yeah.
probably.
Prominent or discordant, maybe you could put, because if something's great looking, maybe it's okay if it's there, I don't know.
Is it a question of scale, the size? Is it a question of
It's the quality.
Yeah, whether or not it fits. which
Yeah,
is
I mean, I
always
think
gonna be
discordant
subjective.
is maybe the right
Okay,
word.
yeah.
Be the right word, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody may still try to define that differently than
Yeah,
you or I might, but
That's how you spell
it's a start,
discordant,
right? Discordant, yes.
I just had a question about the beginning of this paragraph. I felt it was a little bit meta. Is it as valuable for this to simply start off, identify landscape features within Shelburne that are worth preserving or promoting?
Yeah, I mean, if that's more understandable,
The linking community values with landscape aspects to establish character types, it seemed too meta.
okay.
Well, and the other consideration is that this is still the objective, right?
Yeah.
So when you were just making that suggestion, I
No,
was
this is
thinking.
actually recommendations.
Oh, it
We're
is?
Recommendations
Okay.
now, so, yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, what I was trying to get at is, you know, there are certain views and there's certain aspects to Shelburne that are unique and that really resonate with people, particularly in the rural areas. And that is something that I think should guide how we proceed with shaping how growth happens in these areas. So I don't know, Gail, do you have any?
Just thinking some sort of consistency of design or something like that? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I mean,
Not necessarily consistency, but something that it has character that we value.
right, that's what I'm trying to get at, because I think that's what really speaks to people. I mean, there's the development in one place, people are like, okay, I'd rather not have it, but I'm not going to make that big a fuss about it. In other places, man, that's a sacred cow that is being seriously violated, and people feel very strongly about that. So it's a way of, I'd like to be more preemptive about that. So we're not in the situation where we have these things and then we have to get all, try and after the fact do something about it. Are there some places where we could say these are the really important things that make Shelburne Shelburne? We can do that in a heartbeat in the village, right? Because it's architecture. But I'm just suggesting that there are scenic qualities that are very evocative of place in the rural areas. I'm trying to figure out what's the sort of language, the pattern language that we can develop for the rural areas. Because otherwise we're going to be just really vulnerable. And I'm particularly concerned about where the suburban growth areas end and the rural areas begin. That's going to be the boundary that is in greatest danger of being degraded, I think.
How about just another way of wording it maybe is identify, promote, and preserve landscape aspects that support our community values?
Works for me.
Do you want to repeat that?
Identify, preserve, and promote landscape aspects.
Okay, so I thought I was going to be able to repurpose. Identify, sorry.
Preserve.
And promote, identify, preserve, and promote landscape aspects that support our community values.
Are you talking just about landscape, or are you talking about the built environment too?
Well, in the rural areas, the buildings are within a landscape setting. It's, that it's more, the landscape is more the thing that reads. Whereas in the village, it's the architecture is what predominates.
I'm sorry. Identify, preserve, and promote landscapes.
Identify,
Landscape
preserve, and
character
promote.
types? What about landscape character types? Does that seem? Is that too? Nobody knows what that means except for me? Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. All right.
Well, Dick was saying add structures, landscape aspects and structures that support our community values. Or landscape features and structures that support our community
Including
values.
structures is important, because it's some of those big McMansions that don't seem to be consistent with the values of anybody but the person who's building them.
Well put.
So are we good with
Yeah.
that, and we can get rid of that?
Thanks, Stephen. That's much better.
So number 3 and 4 need to be capitalized.
And there's 2 ins in the second line of 3. Right next to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Variety of settings in.
Oh.
And 2 areas at the end of the sentence.
The brain is an interesting thing, how sometimes you just read right
Yeah.
over stuff.
Yeah, which end do you get rid of?
Do you want to capitalize growth areas and rural areas
Sure.
to be consistent?
Second one had to come.
I think she was suggesting capitalizing areas also.
Yeah.
But just one of them,
Say what?
just one of the areas, but capitalized.
Oh,
Oh,
just, well, the term group,
Yeah, growth areas is the thing, right?
yeah, yeah, I must
In
have
rural
misunderstood. In the undeveloped portions of the growth areas and, so, yeah, someone just tell me what you want.
I mean, if we're gonna capitalize
I guess we just
anything,
need
then
to
they
see
should be consistent. That's,
Yeah, there are 2 growth areas, there's 1 rural area, so it could be the singular,
great.
and then that would just bring us back to the,
Right.
in the rural area.
looks good.
What are transects, Kate?
The transect is, it's actually a term, or it's a tool from, that I think comes from the world of biology. And it's kind of showing, like, almost in a section, how, you know, some aspect related to, you know, ecologic change in a setting, it's usually related to a setting. There you go, yeah. So the new urbanists have used it, have adapted it to land use. And I think it kind of shows really very, very effectively the development intensity and in different sort of settings.
Okay.
So the reason I wanted to bring it into the focus of, in this section of the town plan, is the library, the site plan for the library was the stormwater mitigations that were proposed for that were very sort of suburban looking, and they were going to be very dominant in that that setting. And I thought that was going to have a very negative impact on the pedestrian quality, and the sort of priority there should be social gathering, and it's one of our most important public spaces. And the stormwater should be, while it's important, it first of all, it can be handled in different ways, more imaginatively, and secondly, it should not predominate in, you know, it should not impede pedestrian circulation and social mingling and things like that. So, so what might be appropriate for, you know, somewhere in a more car-dependent part of the town is maybe not the best practice to use in, you know, the someplace like, you know, kind of ground zero for social and pedestrian movement in the village.
Is that a word that should be in your glossary somewhere?
What a transect is? Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe, yeah.
I feel like it's been used somewhere else as well. And I know we've talked about it a lot, and it's, I don't know if we've removed it in other places, but yeah, it should be in the glossary either way. And being a recommended action, the commission that is looking at that point, sort it out. It's a growth area 1. It's, and aside from the map reference, which we'd have to update as that stuff goes in, I didn't have any comments there. I do agree with removing the 88 village plan reference.
So we'll go, like I said,
Yeah.
I think just to keep things moving,
Sure,
I'd
yeah,
be
yeah.
happy to,
Yeah,
if
if
there's
any-
agreement on them.
Yeah, in the interest of speed, I mean, I'll just, I don't know if it's easier, I can call out where if I have something, I don't have anything in this section, if anybody else does.
Under objectives number 7, I just wanted to.
Oh, I did have comments before that.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yeah. I was thinking in terms of that page. Okay, nothing on the map. On page 12 then, after the map, I think there's after the VN and the third line down from the top, do we need that and? I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, just to the right of your cursor, just removing that and.
VN comma.
Yeah, and then, yeah, this might be a good rhythm if, like, I can call out where the next one is, which is before 7, was on number 2. And if anybody has something before that, jump in. And actually, technically, I guess it's number 3. Explore the benefits of VN designation as a vehicle towards achieving, just to eliminate 2 4s.
Yeah.
What was mine? Replace something.
Right above your mouse,
Or to achieve.
yeah, to achieve or towards achieving, just to not have 4 twice.
Yeah, maybe to achieve, then we get rid of that gerund.
Sure.
Yeah.
I can't see my
I'm
comment.
really having SAT flashbacks now.
A
Gerund.
gerund? Oh, yeah, for me it's Latin.
Oh,
Put that in the glossary, what gerund means.
right. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And then Susanna, you said 7, unless you're still on that.
I mean, there'll probably be some consistency issues over like capitalizing village. Number 3, Shelburne Village, is that capital V?
Sure, yeah.
Number 7 is about continuing to enhance connectivity with the museum. I don't know, I kind of feel like job well done. Does it need to be in there?
Yeah.
Because there's a sidewalk there now, and crosswalks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I feel like it's pretty well connected, or do you envision?
I think it could,
Even better.
I think it's kind of evolving.
Yeah.
It's gotten a ton better over the years, but I think more could happen.
Okay.
I did make a change. There was another change I made. The green one.
The green one?
Yeah, and at the number 4. Before I figured out the system. So I had added updated Village Green plan. Assuming, or to be updated plan. I just don't feel like we should use those as references anymore. When they're that old, they should be reviewed or. So it's more of a note in place than a statement, but we keep referencing these old plans that really should be reviewed.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that. And I think we hit that in some other section as well, where we were,
I almost wonder if that shouldn't be the goal, is to update the Village Green and Parade Ground plan somewhere. And just take it out.
How about enhance the triangular village and green parade grounds, period, update the landscape master plan for these sites or something like that.
Good idea.
all right, so get,
I mean, the year is removed under the edit I propose, so, yeah.
right, but as, this is we're in recommended action, or is this, actually, this isn't even, no, this is an
Objectives.
objective, right. So we could pull that out and make it a recommended action.
If you want to make it as update the plan, which was done 2006, yeah.
Either,
Update or review. Review and update.
I think consistent with an updated, I mean, you're basically saying it needs to be updated. That's an objective. That's how it could be referenced in any,
That's what it was meant
plan.
To say is that
Yeah.
we're no longer gonna tie the document to this really old thing.
Right. Yeah. And a future commission would read this as an objective, and that would be I think that makes sense. Is that good?
Sure.
All right. And before we hit number 7, I think I did have a comment on 6 with the width of 10 feet. Then there may be, okay, that was just town highways specifically. I think my comment was just, we had talked about narrowing roads and that sort of thing. I didn't know if that was a conflict.
What is the town spec now? Is that
Well,
11 or 12?
when you say spec, you're talking about the public works specifications, or are you talking about the
Public
the
works.
recent policy discussions of the select board? Because they've been on board with
narrowing?
with lanes narrower than what the public works specs call for.
So is that universal throughout the town or just certain, like the village, or do they?
They've only talked about it, well,
It's more
I'm not sure.
aspirational at this point than anything else.
So there is a spec for the width of the lanes, or there is not?
There is.
Well, there are public works specifications that talk about they talk less about the lanes than they talk about the overall width of the pavement. And there are 2 categories of road, and I think they're 22 feet is the least narrow.
They really need to be updated.
Yeah, so that we can call out the width of the lane rather than, because it seems like when the roads get restriped, it's always, leave 1.5 feet on the edges, and whatever the width is, take up that whole thing with automobile lane. And especially in village areas, if we want to slow things down, we provide a right-size lane instead of just use the whole thing.
Yeah, this,
And travel lanes on town highways shall be right-sized, and then we can just,
but
does it have to be specified what that is?
I mean, I think there's value in a number, just because the number has been so much a part of public discussion, and if you leave it open, then the debate could move it back in the direction of 11 or 12 feet.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that if the consensus has started to form that in places like Marset Road or Falls Road, some of those can be 10 feet, then that's probably what you want the plan to say.
I'm just wondering what they are now.
If it's what?
I wonder what they are now.
They vary in different places, but some of them, I think some places 11, 11 and a half. Some places it's greater.
12.
I like putting down 10 feet in there just to give some kind of a milestone for what we're going for.
I'll give the select board something to talk about.
Yeah,
They were minor.
yeah.
So leaving that in. What are the next comments?
I have one on 8.
All right.
I do not like the idea of taking on Route 7. I think that's a major project. It's a huge expense. And if we do it, it's probably irreversible once we start making changes. Right now, it's set up so that the state takes care of what is a major project. It would probably double the work of our road crew. I think if we...
The select board to decide whether it makes economic sense.
What I would propose doing is if the commission comes to a consensus and wants to do that, they'd propose it to the select board as a separate item and not put it in a town plan.
No, I think it's important to put in there, and it also
Me
says
too.
consider.
Yeah,
It doesn't say has to, it's
What is
a
it?
discussion topic that we should discuss.
What does it, now or later?
Well, not, just at some point in the future, yeah. It's a
Well, go ahead.
place
I don't
for
really
it.
Question.
understand what class 1 highway means.
That means that, Class 1 highway would mean that we would take over the maintenance of Route 7.
Right.
And the state would give us money, in theory, to do this. And so the benefits would be that we would have pretty much full control over that road. We could plant street trees, we could do sidewalks the way we wanted to, we could just do a lot of different stuff.
Could put parking on it?
It could be parking, yeah, it could be totally, we could self-determine. Yeah, we could self-determine as much as we wanted, but we would have to maintain it. And one of the obstacles to more, V-Trans would like municipalities to do that, but one of the obstacles to that happening more often is they're not, the legislature isn't funding, providing sufficient funding. So it ends up, Dick has a very good point, it ends up being something that a town needs to enter into very carefully. But in theory, it could bring, if properly funded, it could bring many benefits, so.
I just don't see it as ever being properly funded, and particularly the way the state is going now, they're cutting back on all programs. And it's a lot more work for the town. This is a highway that has 17,000 cars a day going through here, I believe it's 17. And that traffic has to get through. So what are we going to do? We're going to make a beautiful raceway. I don't know that it's going to be beneficial to the town.
Well,
And particular taxpayers.
It's just consider adopting, so we would have to have a discussion about it.
It is with consider, but would it be helpful to add a last sentence to that saying paying special attention to ensuring it can be properly funded? Or something like that, just to show that there is concern around that?
I don't think so. I think that's the select board's job.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I think this is an important thing to put in. I feel it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be impede traffic flow. I would think that
I don't mind the
we
first
wanna
half of the
allow
sentence.
the traffic to flow, but allow it to be part of the town. It's a big part of not making our town and village feel cohesive. And it can, there are towns, Great Barrington, Massachusetts has Route 7 going right through, and it handles it great.
So does Manchester, for that matter.
Yeah.
If that were to be done, could it avoid having Route 7 widened, for instance, through the village?
Yeah, we would have control
We
over that.
would have control
yeah.
over that, it seems like that
Well,
would
and
be
we could
important.
handle the stormwater with street trees. We could do, there's a lot of different things that we could do that we can't do now.
So is it really the second sentence? I mean, I could see an
It's the
argument
second sentence.
that the future success and prosperity of the village doesn't necessarily hinge on Shelburne Road. I mean, it hinges on it maybe existing,
The state's been,
but
they've wanted 4 lanes for 30 years, and they've adhered to the town's statement that we want to maintain 2 lanes.
But that could change at any moment. All it takes is somebody from the Agency of Transportation saying we're going to change it despite what Shelburne wants.
So if we
It would be-
change it and then we start backing traffic up to McDonald's, what will the state do at that point?
Nobody's saying backing traffic up.
But
I think to do it in a smart way. It's not saying stop traffic.
I just don't think it's achievable, but.
How about instead of consider, say, investigate?
Sure.
So one of the things is that there was a study done statewide a couple of years ago that resulted in a spreadsheet that you can crunch these numbers, and then when the Southern Gateway project was done, Lucy Gibson did do an analysis, and the economics are not favorable. She looked at a couple of different areas. If you do a little, it has certain implications. If you do a larger area, it has different implications. So that was one of the reasons for my comment, because I think in the transportation section, it might recognize that a little bit more. But with the information that we have now, we know that it would cost the town money, but there would be, as Kate says, additional control. So I'm trying to figure out whether or not, is the idea that do you like the idea? Do you like the idea if it's economically sustainable, or is it not about economics?
It's about economics.
So could it be, town officials should consider adopting Shelburne Road as a Class 1 highway if economically sustainable, or something like that?
Bridgens makes it that way by giving out a lot of tickets for speed.
We give out a lot of warnings.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah, I would still agree that I think the next sentence is a little extreme, but I'm either way, I suppose.
Future success and prosperity of Shelburne Village would be enhanced? Oh, well,
Yeah, like it does, I mean, it doesn't hinge on Shelburne Road being owned by the town. I could easily see that being something that would be nitpicked to death. Because that statement, I don't,
And then put would be enhanced then.
Could be enhanced.
could be enhanced. Sure. I mean, well, because the sentence after that
Yeah,
is
I was gonna
explaining
say-
what it is that we're saying, which is why I think
yeah, so it may not,
is there a
is the
need for
second
that
sentence really
right?
necessary if you
Right.
are determining that by owning it, it would make the community's vision take precedent over the state?
Right, because this still keeps in that you're consider adopting it as a highway, and then even without that sentence, it's suggesting by doing that, it would give us control to do these other things that would be great, without having something that could be contentious.
I think we should make clear that, that we feel like it would help the prosperity of the town to do that.
Yeah, I think, well, I think that it could help is a fair statement. To say that the future success and prosperity hinges on this is not,
I
that's
agree,
going too
hinge
far.
should probably
Yeah.
be changed to something,
Right.
like be enhanced by, or would be enhanced, could be enhanced,
Might be.
might be, could be.
Oh, I think it's absolutely, it would be. It's just a question of are we willing to pay for it? And so far, that has not been, compelling enough. But at some point in the future, it might.
Sure.
So it could be enhanced at Shelburne Road, and then what's the idea that we want to, do we want to continue with this safe and attractive streets idea, or is it something else?
That's what I was trying to reword in my head and thought it'd be easier to take out the sentence, but I mean, if that vibe really needs to stay in there, then yeah, it just need to be wordsmithed.
How about a safer, more attractive street? Or,
Yeah.
but I think currently a state highway helps to explain that that's what it is.
On the Gateway project, didn't we pick one that was most viable?
Wait, just a second.
Just becomes,
Yeah. Is that,
Mhm.
okay. Dick, what was your question?
Didn't we, there was like 3 versions of what they wanted to do in the Gateway, and we
It
selected
has to
one?
do with, yes, it's the area that's included, and it all revolves around the reimbursement rates and things like bridges and signals, and how much it costs to operate and how much it costs to replace those.
all right. So, with that point done, checkpoint, we're about a third of the way through this section,
It gets better as you move through it, though.
which is totally
A
fair.
little
I
more
just want to
quickly.
ask the appetite for how long we're willing to stay. I'm just trying to be
On the
realistic.
next page, how much do you want to do?
I have
Alright.
a comment on number 11.
Okay.
And where you say the village is situated within the McCabe's Brook watershed, I think something at that point that indicates that it's sort of next in line to be impaired would add some gravity to it.
Vulnerable.
Yeah.
how about vulnerable.
The vulnerable McCabe's?
Vulnerable? Or,
Or threatened or something like that.
Yeah. I think
Threatened?
is a good word.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that good, Gil?
Yeah, I think
All
so.
right.
Are we still on 12?
to 8 for a second?
Okay.
Just on that last sentence, rather than just focusing on vehicles and stormwater, just to say something about pedestrians, like pedestrian accessibility as one of the three, like vehicular levels of service, comma, pedestrian accessibility.
Pedestrian, yeah, accessibility or, I don't know,
Is it pedestrian use?
delight. I mean, is that, maybe that's too, that's like way out there.
Pedestrian bridge. Museum bridge over.
Okay.
Pedestrian accessibility?
Yeah. Pedestrian
And-
comfort or something like that, and you're thinking like, right now, you have to walk next to all those cars, but, you know, if you had street trees, you know, that would give you more of a sense of separation and comfort and
Pedestrian
sa-
safety.
Safety, yeah.
Pedestrian safety, and then maybe
Oh.
just the last part, and instead of how stormwater is treated and managed, just say, and stormwater management.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, because I was going to say now we're making it sound like it's state priorities.
I wonder
Right.
how much of that the state would allow us to do now.
Well, they'll let us do some of it, but we have to do it the way they want us to, which is probably not the way most of us want to do it. It's going to look really, you know,
I wonder if we've
Heavy-handed,
done research though, what they
retrans-looking.
would let us do.
Someone has to go to a meeting.
so.
Yeah.
Did we talk about number 12?
Number 12, can benefit from- in the last sentence from being positive as opposed to negative by saying something like stormwater solutions should support, or something like that, rather than should not occur.
I feel like it already said, Gail, in number 11, it says best management, stormwater best management practices. You know. So seems like,
But here we're talking more about the aesthetics, I think, in number 12. And so sort of making them support each other seems,
I think they need to work with stormwater as opposed
How
to,
about achieve environmental efficiencies? You know,
while supporting.
yeah, or ensure that environmental efficiencies
I just think must not
will
occur,
not, you know,
has to disappear.
complement the pedestrian experience or something like that. You know, it's not, it's complementarity we're after, right? Rather than,
Right, rather
than
let's
saying,
eliminate it
yes,
if it
exactly.
doesn't.
Yeah, it's a huge stormwater detention pond and we don't really care what happens to the pedestrians.
So instead of must not occur at the expense, have should support?
Just complement, that ensure that,
complement.
yeah, something that, what do we say, ensure that environmental efficiencies
And you go back to best
are-
practices, which means they'll do the best stormwater they can
are
and still
achieved
restrict it.
in a manner that complements the pedestrian experience or something like that. And again, this relates to this real-life example where it seemed like every other consideration was, you know, had a constituency there saying, you know, we have to do this, we have to do this, and, you know, but it, you know, when the proposal came before the bike and pedestrian paths for our comment, we were like, wait a minute, this totally undermines anything to do with pedestrians.
I'd still like to lose must not occur.
Right, so replace must not occur at the expense of with should support, so that we don't replicate complement. So the must not,
Support a high-quality streetscape.
yeah, so must, highlight must not occur at the expense of, and then replace that with should support.
Isn't, aren't we like adding another, like by having number 12 as a separate thing, we're kind of combining 11, which is the stormwater thing, and 6,
I thought 11
which is
covered.
pedestrian accessibility. And, maybe we just add to, instead of having 12, just add to 11 and say, try
So
not to
it-
let the stormwater management impede pedestrian access,
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
rather
Just-
than having a whole separate
Yeah, that's fine.
thing.
Good.
Just, I guess make it a really, let's see. Maybe you could just take that first sentence out and just say, no,
Oh,
that's
12.
12, take out 12, okay, so we're talking about blending 11 and 12, right? So take out that first
All
sentence.
right, and add it
Which
to
sounds-
11.
Move that first sentence to the beginning of number 6.
Oh,
Would that,
where's that?
That one
number
doesn't-
6 say?
The first sentence of 12 recognizes.
Oh, yeah, good idea, okay, good.
It does say
Yeah.
something that's important.
Yeah.
So it almost says it already.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's nice, because it couches, like, you're doing all these things because of that, which is nice, which is good to, you'd be surprised how important it is to, people have to be reminded of this over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It's not self-evident.
But are you
You were-
going to try to combine?
Yeah, we're just gonna smush that up into 11, so 11's gonna become bigger.
Yeah.
It's just remove the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
So Dick's comment about delete.
Let's delete the 12 original.
I don't recall hearing you say anything about your comment about compact mixed-use neighborhoods. Was that?
I just didn't like the term compact. I didn't think it needed to be there. It is a compact neighborhood, and it will be regardless. So I don't know if compact is going to create the idea that maybe it needs to be more compact.
I like the idea of compact.
I don't mind it is compact.
It's just kind of a
If you have
reference to the
60-foot
character,
streets,
the existing
where you live,
character of
what was
the
your frontage?
development.
70 feet.
90.
proposing to add compact?
No, actually, I took it out and I put it back because I didn't want to change the original, and I didn't know what I was doing when I got there. I had to go back and make all kinds of corrections. We really need a class on this.
get off my lawn.
No, it's true, you get in the wrong editing mode, and you can do it without realizing it, and then
Yeah.
you've just,
But
So
Played-
I would have
played God
deleted compact
somehow
if I had
accidentally.
done it originally. I would have just put delete that word, but
people want to keep compact?
some people want to keep it.
I like compact,
Yeah.
yeah. Because we don't just want to make it mixed use, do we? And
Well, it is
like Shelburne
compact.
Road is mixed use.
It's actually a model of compact.
it is,
It
yeah.
is,
So
it
it's
is already
it's,
compact, and that's why I didn't think the term needed to be there.
Well, but that's a type of mixed use that it is representative of versus other mixed use, which is, we'd like to maybe have less of.
Keep it compact.
So what if
Yeah.
instead of reinforced, it was maintained as a compact mixed use?
Okay, that's fine.
I thought it's not mixed use except for the two
It was-
grandfathered uses that are there.
Yeah, the store and,
And the old Civil Engineering Associates.
Yeah.
yeah,
But the zoning changes
I would,
that took place 5 years ago made it
I tried to
that you
move.
can't continue to do mixed use there, that it, the rest of it, anything new would be residential.
We reestablished a store, didn't we?
The
You
store
can
that
be a
has
store there.
deli thing.
That got changed, so it can.
But so is it still mixed use?
The district is called the Shelburne Falls Mixed Use District, although it's usually called Shelburne Falls District. Are you talking about the zoning, or are you talking about what's
The
actually
zoning,
there?
Yeah, the actual
'Cause-
zoning, because it was zoned mixed use
Yeah,
at one
it's-
point, and we changed it.
Right, but it's not that different in terms of the zoning from the residential district.
There are businesses in some of those.
There are a few
Home-
businesses
home
in
occupations.
the two buildings that Stephen mentioned. I mean, well, there's nothing in the ground floor of the former Galapos, but there are some businesses across the road.
Well, from my perspective, what I'm hearing though is it's semantics, but it's legitimate that if the area, you couldn't just, it's not technically mixed use. We might be calling it mixed use, but it's not technically a mixed use district, right? Except for that building that now can be a deli.
And that was a special use.
There
Which is
are
a special
some,
use, right?
yes, there are some commercial uses that could go there, but there are barriers, and it's not likely that people would be able to overcome those barriers, because they would have to assemble land to meet the frontage requirements, and
And I suppose, Stephen, to your question, if I'm getting it right, that does calling that a mixed-use neighborhood make sense? Because is it technically a mixed-use neighborhood?
some might say that well, the DRB has approved projects that are deemed to be mixed use where it's 95% residential and there's 5% commercial, and they'll call that mixed use.
Okay.
Because it's more than residential. So there isn't really a solid test to determine how much commercial is needed for it to be called mixed
I don't
use.
think it should be mixed use.
Yeah, and I think that's
it's a negative
that's the
connotation
point.
to the development, to that community. You can have in-home businesses, and there are several.
Well, and some
Yeah,
would
there
argue
is
that if
operating
you have a
there.
home occupation,
Yeah.
that makes it mixed use.
Well, we're just on
You
the
can have-
outside the edge of what's now the Shelburne Falls.
You can have an in-home business anywhere in Shelburne.
Well, I guess my question, Dean, would be to you, is there any issue with calling that mixed-use neighborhood?
Not in my mind, but I know
Okay.
that Dick has concerns about the district. I think you'd rather see it residential.
I would.
Yeah. It's,
And in essence, is pretty much residential.
but there are commercial properties in it, there are commercial activities taking place within residential properties, and there are buildings that could be occupied by commercial uses that are currently vacant.
Can that be resolved with the glossary?
I think it already was, because we really changed the use for that building, for that.
When we talk about glossary, I mean, definitions and the zoning regs
Yeah.
are not the same thing as the glossary. I mean, there isn't a glossary per se in the
And
zone.
that's what I was hearing, Stephen, in your comment, and I tend to agree, is if by having in the town plan, we're calling that a mixed-use neighborhood effectively, is that gonna create confusion? Because technically, it's not a mixed-use section. The mixed-use sections are, there's one in the north and one in the south, right?
village.
Or in the
Mixed
village.
use, Shelburne Road, Route 7 mixed use, and Shelburne Falls mixed use are in the zoning regs.
That's how that's referred to there? Okay, so
Okay,
that's
all right,
consistent
yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect, okay.
Dean, did you move that first sentence of 12 back to number 6? Or did you just strike it? Okay, I wasn't paying attention, but thank you.
Are we gonna,
Okay,
are we gonna
great.
continue with the recommended actions, or are we,
Yeah, that ends this little section, doesn't it?
Yeah, let's at least finish that up.
okay.
So what's the next one with the comment?
Number
here?
1.
Number 1.
First word. I'd like to remove immediately, because I think, I didn't do the rest of it, did I? Immediately, because I think that section is gonna be in the plan forever. Because we're now doing the plan every 5 years, right, after this, or is it? So that will reoccur every 5 years so far. So if we just put
That's fine.
pursue or recommend renewal.
What's the VN designation?
It's a.
Village neighborhood.
Village neighborhood, yeah. It's a kind of designation through the Agency of Commerce and Community Development.
Right, it's Vermont neighborhood.
Village.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Tax
village,
This is
right?
Vermont neighborhood prior to that.
To
Or-
say Vermont, is it, that was village.
Yeah, I thought it was
No,
village
in
too.
this context, it's Vermont Neighborhood,
Vermont
which is
Neighborhood,
a
okay, Vermont Neighborhood.
program that's created to
Okay, yeah.
have incentives for residential development.
Yeah.
My next comment was on number, well, 4.3, next page, but is there anything sooner than that? The despite, it'd be,
I do have an issue. And this has been occurring now for 12 years, maybe 13 years, what's now 3, or it's 2.
number 2.
And it says periodically revisit the provisions of the town's bylaws that pertain to the village area to ensure that they encourage and facilitate the pattern of types of development envisioned by the plan. That's all okay. Residential densities in the village, generally speaking, should be higher. So what it goes from is from here. When you start reading this, you think that this hasn't been done already, that when they made the changes to the rural area originally, they also, they went into zoning and made changes to the village and to the falls area, and they reduced the amount of land that needed to be done. So by reading this, it keeps encouraging us to keep going back to that and doing it again. So I'm concerned that I'm sort of explaining that we've already taken care of this once, and we've got that course is pretty well set in other areas where it talks about the village will be the most dense and the other areas. So I don't want to keep putting pressure on to keep rezoning this district because it's in the town plan.
Well, if that doesn't happen, as things change, which they will, then the more residential will be like
Well, they're-
continuously pushed out to the outskirts.
Well, no, not necessarily,
Unless we
because zoning
adapt
has,
somehow.
well, zoning, that's what I'm saying, we already adapted.
But-
Like your lot, for instance, was big enough, you could have put another house on your lot. And that McGregor's next door, their zones, with the zoning change, I think they could put 3 in there. They were gonna do 1. Almost every house on that street is already eligible to expand another unit. So what I'm saying is already done, it's just that the people that live in that community aren't anxious to do it. The only person who's done it, taken advantage of it, was somebody who got divorced and decided they could make a few bucks when they left. So they put a house down over the bank in probably the worst subdivision we've seen in a long time.
It's a
So-
little close to home for you, I guess.
It is. But where I'm going is I would like to see us do a study before we, if we're going to keep, I think it puts pressure on neighborhoods. Not just this neighborhood either, but it doesn't make a lot of sense for some neighborhoods. You get up off Marset Road, all those houses are pretty well developed. Why do we want to put development pressure on that in that area? I think it should be we should be doing a study to figure out how many lots there are available right now with existing zoning before we maintain. I just don't see that. And you should walk through the Falls area. How many houses go on the market? Almost none. People stay there forever. It's a community that's all set up, but yet we're putting pressure on to develop it in a different way, to change the character of that neighborhood.
How about consider a study that that revisits the provisions?
We have that already in other areas that we will revisit zoning every 5 years or something to that effect. There's another clause somewhere else that says that very thing.
Dick, what's the part that you don't like? It says residential densities in the village, generally speaking, should be higher than in other parts of the
So
town. Hold on. Within the village, density should be highest in the village center, next highest in the Shelburne Falls section, and next highest in the residential areas. What's wrong with that?
Do we feel that we want to make the village more dense than it is?
We're just
It's
saying
not
that it
saying
should be
to make it-
denser than,
Right.
I see it
not
as.
than it is. It should be denser than
It
the
is.
the Shelburne Falls section, and it should be denser still than residential areas, but it's not I'm not in favor
I think it
of big
encourages-
studies, but it just says periodically revisit.
But I think
To see
we
that it
already
is.
cover that in another section where it starts out, it says that we will periodically check, reevaluate zoning. So this is zeroing in on these neighborhoods to do this now. It's like it hasn't been done.
I think it's, I agree with Stephen. I think it's just sketching out an overall vision of what we want the town to look like and where, to me, this is all relative to language. It's not saying, single in on a specific area and make it more dense. It's just sketching out, this is the general idea of what we're going for. And, just, ensure that we're, moving forward in the right, along that track.
It's consistent with the terminology and verbiage in the rest of the section as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I just think that the first sentence is enough, but.
So Dick, can you cite an example of a zoning change that put added pressure on that?
Well, no, but when people are looking to do, they'll read this in the town plan, and an example was Fisher's development. I mean, this, I think, gave him the idea that you could get more development in that area. And they asked, what was it, 16 or 18 units, I forget what it was now. And I think that's,
But Bill Posey didn't get a rezoning.
he didn't get it,
Yeah,
no.
right.
But he may not have asked if this hadn't been in there, is my point.
Well, but we can't prevent him from asking.
And he's not in the Shelburne Falls district. The Fisher property is in the Shelburne Falls district.
All right, well, I understand that I'm outnumbered here, so I'll let it ride again. Another 5 years.
Next revision.
You'll get us on attrition.
No, I'll age all you guys.
So we were at 3 or 4?
I think three, whatever the pink thing is.
I was just gonna recommend adding its after despite its location.
Wait, spike what?
They're just adding the word ITS after the word despite, number 3.
Okay, so just, that, a lot of that language was either taken out verbatim or
Oh, sure, yeah, no,
paraphrased
again, I'm
from
not,
the,
it's not a, yeah.
the little guidebook thing that they made up. So, it's,
Yeah, and with recognizing that the source from elsewhere, I mean, my general reaction to it was that it was pretty narrative for a recommended action, but I'm okay with that as well. But the following specific steps should be implemented should probably be retained, because then we do list out a couple of bullets. Otherwise, those bullets just seem randomly placed.
Should there be, you mentioned in this continued, it said most of the, few structures in the village suffer from neglect, and there are only a few. Should there be anything that addresses that? The fact that there are some that are neglected, is there anything that we want to do to encourage anything? Another way of treating those buildings?
I think we tried, haven't we?
the investment, I don't know, I think that the guidelines were, this description was that the overall quality of the village is extremely high.
Right, yeah.
And it was sort of setting up a baseline for, why it's deserving of this protection and careful oversight. Like, it's a curated place, and that's probably a lot wordier than it needs to be. I was just trying to rip through this whole thing as quickly as I could.
Yeah, I
and-
wasn't
Yeah.
in any way contradicting what was here, but just wondering if there's any way to address the things that are neglected.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe they do in that book. I haven't, incentives or something, I don't remember seeing that. Do they?
Something that HPDRC wrestles with all the time. They've talked about creating incentives, they've talked about the possibility of a fund, but there hasn't been an easy solution sometimes they think that the key is to have strict regulations that prevent someone from demolishing a structure, and if there are people that are just allowing demolition by neglect, then maybe they'll stop doing that if the regs will prevent them from doing it. But then there are other situations where the thought is, well, give the developer some additional development potential so that they can use that potential to have, the economics will work. So like with the Fisher House, there was a difference of opinion about whether or not there should be more density provided so that he could, quote, save that house. And in the end, they gave him approval to demolish it.
That was more because of the structure, though. The house was, the foundation, everything was bad.
Yeah, and again, differences of opinion. Some people said it couldn't be saved, others said it could.
And I guess what I was getting at is there any kind of enforcement that can be undertaken with a suggestion in the plan that would prevent buildings from collapsing? Like there's this is not in the village, but that brick gold farmhouse where the horses were abused has now basically collapsed.
But that happens to a lot of farm structures. I don't know
But
how you
there's
make
one in the
farms.
village that's close.
Yeah, and one in the falls. But that one should change. That,
Something's happening to them.
yeah.
Well, we can't mandate that people take care of their houses if they can't afford to.
I mean, there are attempts made to do that with demolition by neglect ordinances. Burlington has some form of that, I believe. But that's when you say, is there something that we can enforce now? No, we don't have a regulatory mechanism that we could use to try to force the owners to do something. Some people might want to see us try to adopt those regs, and then the question would be whether or not they would work.
Heinsberg just did, I think it took them like 12 years to tear down a house that they condemned.
Didn't we discuss this in the historic preservation discussion?
I think so.
There were definitely some points around this, because we had a long discussion around
Yeah.
what we can or can't do.
Yeah, yes, they have had that conversation.
But I mean, in the section that we discussed as a commission for
Yeah.
this plan, I think we have some language to address that, or whatever.
Part of that.
Yeah, however far we
I
thought
missed
we
that
could
one,
go,
too.
I think we included that there. But
Can I add something in that's not in here? And I don't know if this is the place to add it, but the train reminds me of it right now. Where would we add something like, if we all agreed, consider designating the Harbor Road Railroad crossing a quiet area as far as train whistles?
It was.
It was what?
It was a quiet area at one time,
Not this one.
wasn't it? They spent $1 million, didn't they, for that crossing?
Up further, when the commuter rail project was planned.
Yeah, there are other crossings
But not this one.
farther north that are.
This one isn't a quiet crossing.
I
Yeah.
thought it was.
I would think, Stephen, that rail section within the transportation chapter would be a place for that, a logical place for it, at least.
Mm.
I don't think that.
Great,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I thought they were in court to try to do that as well, and that didn't.
I don't think anybody's tried to, as far as I know.
so would that be, you want to take a look at that rail section and transportation and propose a recommended
I don't have
action?
any
Sure.
And then we
opposition to
can-
it, but
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
it seemed like they tried to do something about it, though.
So in the interest of making things less wordy, I am proposing in that one that we're working on now, Shelburne, where the first sentence, just taking all that out, the village retains its,
3?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. So we would keep that, and then the next sentence, let's see, we could end it at neglect, maybe just take that out, not even get into that. And then just talk about like, because we're planning, right? Like where we want to go, what we want to have happen.
So end it here?
So, yeah. So what do you think? Just take that and then just say, so we're saying what we want to have happen in the future. Because that's kind of covered by, in the design guidelines manual, they go into all the, since we're just kind of repeating like what they've already said in that.
Yeah.
Just in the interest of not having this be super long. It's like the main pieces, don't you think?
Right, I agree.
So,
So delete that.
No.
No,
No.
no.
The sentence,
So-
the two sentences before that.
So keep that, delete where it says neglect
Up
all the
to
way
the
to the
village.
village retains. So
Okay.
get rid of that. There you go. It just makes it pithier.
And then I think we need to keep that last sentence, the following specific steps should be implemented. Or something indicating the following.
To set up the bullets.
Yeah, unless we think that that's cool, just having bullets.
I think leaving that, the following should be implemented.
Or how about implement the following, so it's not so passive?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Will that work?
Yep.
Just implement the following, colon.
Implement or implement the following, so it's like, yeah. I would say just improve. Looks like somehow that, yeah.
All right.
And when you say current shopping park, would that be obvious to everybody? You're referring to where the market is.
Maybe it should say village shopping park.
The village shopping park?
But, I mean, we're talking about Obashan and the market and that area. right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So Shelburne shopping mart?
Improve accessibility.
Is it technically?
Yeah, what is it called?
It's a village
It
shopping
has
park?
a name,
or-
right?
I don't
I
know.
think it does.
Shelburne Shopping Center or something like
Is
that.
that,
Something like that, yeah.
how long have we all lived here?
How many thousand times have we been by that sign?
Right?
Grocery
I know there's a
stores.
sign there.
I think it's.
Some of us still call it the MGA.
Yeah, I was in the Shelburne News today. All right, just get through the recommended actions, you said.
Yeah. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by improve accessibility to the area?
Because it's not very pedestrian friendly right now. It's a little, like you have to, when you cross there, if you've ever tried to walk there,
Yeah.
you have to walk across, it's at least 100 feet, you
Right.
know? And so that could be very easily, smartened up to be more pedestrian friendly.
Like a walkway by park eaters instead? or-
Yeah, well, I'm thinking, right now there's a median, that you could pull the median out further, so it could be incorporated into the crosswalk, to be like a little pedestrian refuge. You could, reduce the curb radiuses there, so that, change the pavement colors, just a number of things that would say pedestrians have the priority here.
Yep.
In a sense, in the way that they don't now.
Got it.
Yeah.
You had no more edits? No. The rest of this section is perfect.
Just on that one, the area north of the current shopping park, that is vague to me. We're talking about the crossing of the entrance to the shopping park.
Right. To me, area north means bring back the shed or,
Yeah,
That was what I was first thinking
get
too.
to
That's a good
Harrington Village
clarification.
or
Was
something.
the shed not there anymore?
No.
it's the
been-
building's there, but the
yeah.
business is gone.
Oh, really?
been gone
When did
for a
that
while.
happen?
9 years ago.
Really?
It's been at least a
No, it's
couple.
been like 2 years.
Was it? Yeah, like 2 years.
Okay.
No more
Ah.
than 2 years, yeah.
The
A
shed.
shed. It would be cool to, yeah.
Shed's been gone a
Right.
lot longer than
Like
that.
a year.
I mean, it is interesting that there are two pretty divergent interpretations of that as either crossing to the north on Falls or,
where the creamery place because that's north.
Creamery place.
That's what I was thinking when I saw the north area of the
Creamery
current.
building?
Yeah, like my first thought,
Creamery.
was the shed area, and then I thought, well, no, that's all in the same area. Why would you don't need that. So then I was thinking it
was
was.
the street.
To me, it
The rest of the street.
suggests,
What do we
yeah.
want?
So we need to clarify it, is I think the point.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what it was.
The Shelburne Shopping Center entrance and north of that, because that's where the sidewalk is just really, you've got the
Yeah, the country
Oh, right in
store.
front of the country store.
It's all, yeah,
Very
it's,
difficult to
The bearded
cross there,
frog.
yeah,
as it is coming in.
yeah.
When you're trying to come out of where the bookstore and the meat market are, and to go south, is also very difficult.
Yeah, that whole segment
Yeah.
is there. Maybe we could call it the segment between or something like that, just to,
between Route 7 and Falls Road intersection and the shopping center.
yeah, something like that, just to, just to kind of,
Yeah.
yeah. Does that make sense? More,
Mhm.
that's more specific? Okay.
I think you're typing how my brain is functioning right now.
You might want to say between the Route 7 intersection.
Yeah.
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 From the Route 7 intersection to the village shopping center.
Yeah.
Do we, yeah, because there's a couple pages left. Do we hold it there and just?
Okay. And pick it up next time?
Yeah, I think that would be, yeah. I guess now I'm not even finishing sentences.
Sounds good.
Sorry. Thank you for that. It's been a week. Yeah, so I think given the time, if we call it there, and we can meet again on Tuesday and talk through the next agenda. All right. So we'll need to, next time would be finish future land use and then touch on the public utilities,
Which is pretty good.
which should be pretty quick.
Get another meeting before you get back to natural resources.
Sounds like, well, it may be that if we get through future land use, I think that.
I think we could probably do both of those.
I think we could, yeah, so,
Yeah.
no retreat,
We'll,
keeping the foot on the gas.
yeah, I think we should definitely at least attempt that. Wow, that was longer than I thought. Yeah, okay.
It's not a lot, it's just a long.
We did, it is. So then,
We got through
okay.
10 pages, that's pretty good.
So should we move on to updates? Thanks, Gail.
Thanks, Gail.
I didn't have anything in my update folder. I didn't have anything in my other business folder.
Well then, are there any commissioner questions and comments?
Nope.
And if there is no other business, motion to adjourn? Second?
Second?
Motion by Dick, second by Kate, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.